Thank you so much, Jasmine, for having me on today. And I am the creator of the sober method. And this is really a wild approach to looking at sobriety. So I went through the traditional, I'm going to go to one of the 12-step programs, and this is going to be the cure-all for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have got over the finish line, but once I was there, I just was left feeling like, is this it? I mean, am I just going to do this the rest of my life? There has to be something more. I have
Mm-hmm.
to feel better than this. I have to want and improve myself in some way. And so I started looking around. I was like, what can I do? And I got the crazy idea that perhaps I could use the Deming cycle, which is used in manufacturing, to continuously improve myself in little steps by self-reflecting upon things that were wrong within myself, rewire those things, and then
Mm-hmm.
reinforce them, check to make sure that it was working, and then go back and do another small thing and do that over and over and over again to improve my overall mental health. It's been amazing. I'm on my 133rd pass in my own system at the moment.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and it works tremendously well. So SOBER stands for Stoic, Observe, Behavior, Execute, and Restore.
Someone who loves you. I'll be the light guiding you through the night when the stars just refuse to shine. And I'll be your shelter, that safe place to hide, your sanctuary.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everyone is Addicted. Today's guest, Massimo, has graciously come on to talk about his knowledge and his experience with addiction. I think he has quite an interesting take on this. So, welcome, Massimo, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Jasmine, for having me on today. And I am the creator of the sober method. And this is really a wild approach to looking at sobriety. So I went through the traditional, I'm going to go to one of the 12-step programs, and this is going to be the cure-all for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have got over the finish line, but once I was there, I just was left feeling like, is this it? I mean, am I just going to do this the rest of my life? There has to be something more. I have
Mm-hmm.
to feel better than this. I have to want and improve myself in some way. And so I started looking around. I was like, what can I do? And I got the crazy idea that perhaps I could use the Deming cycle, which is used in manufacturing, to continuously improve myself in little steps by self-reflecting upon things that were wrong within myself, rewire those things, and then
Mm-hmm.
reinforce them, check to make sure that it was working, and then go back and do another small thing and do that over and over and over again to improve my overall mental health. It's been amazing. I'm on my 133rd pass in my own system at the moment.
That's amazing.
And yeah, and it works tremendously well. So SOBER stands for Stoic, Observe, Behavior, Execute, and Restore. And that pretty much outlined how it works. You're looking within yourself by using Stoic philosophy. Now, one of the reasons that I went with Stoic philosophy is because in the other programs that are out there, there there's a bit of a tendency to lean into some religious undertones that some people find to be off-putting, and it
Yes,
makes it
you do.
difficult for some to fully embrace the
Well,
program they're in because this is in the background. It's always
Well,
sitting there like,
also, it's always the same thing. They're never getting to the root of the problem, like how you said, like working on things, baby steps. However, you need to get there to heal yourself. You're just continuously talking about the past, and you need to learn how to fix yourself. And I can see why you were, because I felt that way too, like left with like, well, how do I fix myself? Because it only goes so far, and I can only talk about the past for so long. Maybe I'm gonna repeat it. I don't know, right? I need
well,
to heal. from my
Yeah.
trauma, or it could maybe not even say trauma, just certain things, even personality quirks that I may have, or things that I may, because I noticed it within myself being more irritable. They call that dry drunk, I guess. But I was irritable. I just find I was not as present. I just found I needed to get healing. So this is why I love that you have something more, you know? It's a really, really helpful tool because I've heard it from a lot of other people saying that same thing. They want something more. So how do you execute this? Like if somebody wanted to learn about it, or um I know you do speaking engagements. How does that
Yes.
work too? Like if somebody
Well,
like just yeah, that part's interesting. So will you tell us a little bit about that?
sure. No. So when I go out and speak on stage, it's taking someone through the process, taking the audience through the process, which we can do a little abbreviated run through right now as well. But before I take you on that, I just want to come back and say one of the most important things that I stress all the time in the Sober Method program is the fact that we're not looking in the past. We're looking ahead to the future, your future self. We're not talking about this what happened back then. You don't focus on that. You never once are going to say, I'm an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. These are self-affirming beliefs. And when you affirm something, that's what you will become eventually. And I think that when we say these in other programs, I think it's just setting yourself up for potential relapse eventually because you're constantly in this mindset
Labels.
of that I am this, I am this. In
Mm-hmm.
every other area of mental health that we have, we never say this. We would be shunned for saying this in other areas of mental
Mm-hmm.
health. Instead, be positive. I am sober, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like to say like I'm in recovery, and when like if I go to a group or something and you have to say it, I feel so uncomfortable because I'm like I haven't used in 5 years. I don't want to use. And there's like a Karl Marx theory called the labeling theory. If you
Hmm.
call yourself or somebody calls you something over and over and over again, you believe it about yourself. And that's exactly what you're talking about is you start to believe it about yourself, and it really does make you kind of slow. That's how I relapsed when I was going to programs because of that, because I was like, well, I'm just an alcoholic anyways, so why not, right? Like that's all I'm ever going to be, and and so it really didn't help, you know what I mean? And that's
No,
why I love that you're putting the past away. So yeah, walk us through this a little bit, please, because I
sure.
really am interested in this.
So the first step is stoic belief. So I immediately tell people to go pick up a copy. You can download a copy for free online of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. And the reason I use this as a baseline, two reasons. One, it's freely available everywhere. So everybody can get a copy of this. It is
Well,
and
thank
if
you for that.
yeah, I mean, so the second reason is that Marcus Aurelius, if you don't know who he is, this is the most powerful person on the planet 2,000 years ago. And it is a look, it is private diary. That's basically what we're reading. And it's interesting to see someone so powerful reflect on things that were so troubling to him, that are so human to us all, and
Hmm.
worrying about what other people thought about him in certain situations. And so it's a very interesting thing. So there are several verses and they're small and short and concise. And so it makes it easy to just break down. And so I recommend that you pick out a passage of in meditations, and you take that verse and then you just really dive into that verse. So let's take that example that I just kind of brought up. So one of the verses within meditations is it talks about looking at the person who says something ill about you. Take a look at who they are and what they believe, and understand that if they don't have any value, then why are you taking any meaning out of what they're saying to you? Now that relates to a lot of us because
Mhm.
anxiety is a huge driver
I
in
have
a lot
social
of addiction.
anxiety and I have to be medicated for it because of bullying and stuff in school. And so that is something that I am going to check out because I really need to do this myself, you know? So, like I said, it really does relate to a lot of us, right? And
Yeah.
envy from all the social media and stuff. So, you really do have to break it down. Like, I got in a fight with my neighbor and I had to, like, she stole my cat. It's a long, stupid story. But, anyways, I got my cat back, but she was like threatening to hit me in front of my children and stuff.
What?
And I decided instead of like, I didn't back down. I stood up. I'm like, all right, you do it then. And then she backed away from me. And I'm like, well, it works that way now, doesn't it? You
Yes.
have no value to me. I
Right.
don't care about anything to do with you. So basically, if you want to yell at me and hit me, go ahead because I don't care. And she did not like that.
You know what, Jasmine? This is fantastic. What you just did is literally walk us through the next step of the sober method, which is observe. You are able to observe the behavior and in this example that I was just giving of what you normally would have acted out. Old Jasmine would have been like, "All right, let's go," right? and new version of Jasmine is, "Okay, does this person mean anything to me? What? Not really. So my reaction is going to be this." And so that's what you're doing in that observe step. What's your current activity? What is the trigger? What happens after you have that trigger? And then you remap this behavior, moving into the behavior area and say, okay, instead, I'm going to react this way. And when I do, what might happen? That's when you go to the execute step. So, okay, let's go test it out. Here's your test. You just had a possible fight with his neighbor, but you disengaged the bomb in your own mind and managed to walk away from a potentially bad situation.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that is a successful move on this part. Now, we're not talking about drinking, but that may have
No.
been a drinking trigger or a drug related trigger for somebody
Yeah,
else,
because
right?
of the anxiety that it
That's
could
right.
bring you, right? Of having because I have to see her every day at the bus stop still, right? So
Right.
it's like some people, you're so right, could be so easily triggered about every day worrying about this person, yet this person just leaves me alone because she knows I don't care, right?
There, yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how once you understand those interactions and what is causing people to react and interact with you in ways that cause that type of anxiety, you can diffuse them permanently just by changing your own behavior. That person still wants to rile you up, but they don't anymore because they've now learned that it doesn't have any impact on you, which is amazing. You have managed to fix the other person's behavior towards you by changing your own thought process. That's pretty wild.
Well,
Yeah.
it took me a long time to get to this point. Like I was bullied and very socially afraid. So that's why I got into the hospitality industry, so
Mm,
that I had to learn how to talk to people. And that's where I was able to learn these kind of skills, kind of because guests can be mean to you, right? So
right.
you take that personally, or you could just not care. And eventually I learned that through working like 20 years as either a manager or bartender or a server, right? So it was all the talking to people and dealing with customers that really helped me learn that lesson, right?
Right. Yeah. No, exactly.
How do you teach people to do that?
To teach them to
Like to be able to not care what other people think, because that's where we kind of went off track, that's all.
right. Yeah, that's okay. That's the whole part of having a conversation. It can meander. Um, so this is really about relating and understanding. They will find their own. We all deal with that differently within our own head, and that's the whole power of this method is that understanding it's not just one size fits all, which is what the other programs really are. It's like, no,
Yeah,
you will do it this way. No,
they're
you will think
daunting.
this way.
They're
And
very daunting.
yes, and that is very challenging for a lot of people. And I have found that it's very challenging for those of us who are highly creative, who have and think differently than the rest of the world does. And so when you have that, it's very difficult to be like, you're pushing me into this box. Well, I'm already not able to drink or use drugs, and now you're trying to make me do something else, and it just causes a lot of friction that is unnecessary. So the beauty in this is that what works for me in that situation is not going to work for you, because this is delving in and really documenting and journaling down how that trigger works. This is what happened when this was said to me. I wanted to do this, or I reacted this way. Well, how might I deal with that differently? What can I think? And you've outlined this perfectly in your example. I mean, like, kudos to you for just perfectly laying this out for me. You,
Sorry.
you did. You just perfectly laid out an example. I love it. And so you managed to look at the situation, look at the person that was bullying you, and just totally diffuse it by saying, I don't really care what she thinks. And that might be different for somebody else. It might require them to think, well, they're going to get their own one day. That might be the thought that diffuses the situation for
Hmm.
them. So everybody is different, and that's why there aren't a lot of rules. I'm just giving some guardrails and saying, here's what you need to do. Here's how your mind needs to think about it. And once you've discovered what will work, write that down and then practice it. And then, set it in motion, execute it. And if it doesn't work, maybe it works for a minute and then it stops working. Well, that's the beauty of the program, is that you go back
Hmm.
and you observe, why is it not working, and make the adjustment to, so it works again. Test it. Oh, it's fixed now. So you spend a lot of time in the OBE area of the sober method, right there in the center, because there's a lot of do this, change the behavior, test it. It works. Oh, it doesn't work anymore. Go back, look, But once you get it down, once you've rewired your brain to think about it differently, it's like it's there. And it is so firm, because what has happened is that you have enabled your mind to understand what you truly think and believe about something. And I think that so often we never take the time to think and really feel anymore. We
I think
just
so
kind of
too.
glaze over our lives, and I think that that's a detriment to our own ability to be happy in any moment in
Hmm.
time. Yeah.
Because I know I do it all like a lot of the time just to get through, but it's you really, I love that the way you said it. Like, you really do need to test out methods, because then you can figure yourself out that way. And you need to figure yourself out, or you're never truly going to know who you are, or become who you could be, because you're holding yourself back because of not working on yourself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And this leans into the whole flavors of confidence, and that's the overarching belief of my entire systems, is that we all are made up of a bunch of different pieces of confidence that form who we are. And what makes me unique and able to survive in this world is that set of confidence. And it's different from me, it's different from you. And so that only comes about from doing that work and reflecting upon, how can I stand and be confident in any situation, anytime. And where that really comes from is the belief that I am doing what I want to do. I am existing in my own space, in my own headspace, and anything that occurs is not going to phase me. And once you reach that point, oh, the world is kind of blissful, really.
Well, because like you said, you figured yourself out. So nothing can really get into you anymore, because you've rewired your brain to not let it. And it helps you with the boundary setting and everything, because once you figured yourself out, it's so much easier to set boundaries, because you know what your boundaries are. So it's like I said, your program is so important, because I feel like one size does not fit all.
No.
So, and I do think we need to really figure out what it is that like bugs us make or just even makes us who we are, or how, like you said, it even in mental health situations, what how to maybe make it work differently by trial and error.
Mhm.
But at least you're working on yourself. A lot of people don't even think to do that, and they just walk around miserable. And instead, like people that like can't fit in the box, it's perfect because they're like, well, I can figure myself out. I took psychology courses because I tried couldn't figure myself out, and it still didn't work, right? So because I wasn't really working on myself, I was just reading things about my mentality. I even have mental health assessments. I've gone to counselors, but it still was never, that trial and error to try to figure out where it is my triggers may lie, where, and it doesn't have to be like sobriety triggers, it can be
No.
anger triggers. And I know I am very quick to get angry. So, or be maybe a little bit more irritable, and I catch myself in it. And like that's where I need to sit down and write down why did I get angry and what, like, do you know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people will also agree that that works far better. That, like, I mean, yes, to get to the point of being able to be sober, but
Mhm.
afterwards, I think you do need to do something else. Otherwise, you're just going to be going in a loop almost, right? And that's
Yeah.
why we need different options like yours. I've talked to a few other people, like there we need options, and they're not always easily available to us. So that's why I like to talk to people like you that have actual methods that have worked, that maybe somebody hears it and they're like, well, now I want to take that step forward because or even just relapse triggers, like because
Mhm.
people do go through that cycle of going in and out of rehab and stuff, but they're not, if you just sat down and focused on that after you got out of rehab, you probably would not relapse, right? So I think it's just so beneficial, you know?
I think that the best method, and I agree with everything you just said, and I constantly say, look, this may not be for you because it requires a lot of work. But you have to be willing to do the work. But maybe it's a
Mm-hmm.
mix and match. Maybe one of the programs out there works well for you, and can be your sidecar. And eventually you're like, wow, this is actually headed in the right direction. And then you start using it as your primary. I really don't care how I help get people sober. It's just I want to be in that conversation and know
Mm-hmm.
that there are options out there. The thing that has been so fascinating to me as I released my book, Sober Method, was the fact that once this got out into the world, I started receiving letters and emails back from readers that were using it for things entirely different than sobriety for, drugs and alcohol. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I had somebody said that it helped them with their device addiction, food addiction. Somebody wrote and said, I'm no longer chewing my nails. I'm like, I wouldn't even have thought of these things. But the underlying causes of so many of these things was digging deep within themselves to ask the question, well, why do I do this? Why is it that I react this way? I currently on my current path right at the moment, I'm working on my patient. This is a very minimal thing, but that's what happens because you work on the big things and then you get smaller and smaller. I get very irritated when I'm in line at at the store and somebody like doesn't know what they're doing and then it just I just get somewhat enraged inside. I hold it in, but I never blow up. But I'm like, sometime maybe I would. So I'm like working on
I
how can I
have
balance that?
before. Somebody cut in line and I'm like, because Christmas time and you're like, ooh. Or even I was at the grocery store the other day and I asked, because I'm not home, I asked where the yogurt was, and the person who was stocking the food was like, I don't know. And it made me so angry, like you said, right? So
Yeah.
I had to let that go, but it was like, you work here, so why can't you be helpful? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I know exactly. And we all have those thoughts, and it's like making sure that I temper that
Hmm.
anger. And I think back, these are the times you take that reflection. And I think back to my past, like 10 years ago when I was still a drunk. I've been sober just over 9 years.
Well, congratulations.
And thank you so much. And that would have been a trigger. I would have like gone. I probably would just reach for my pocket because I just had a flask on me. I would have taken a shot right in front of everybody. Uh, so so I've come a long way
Hmm.
in that form and fashion. So yeah, it's really great. And then as you push forward into the restore step, this is your typical making amends. It's looking back on the correction you just made. How has this impacted things with others in your past? I mean, can you think of like 5 or 6 people that you've like really had a negative interaction based on this thing that you just corrected about your personality? Well, reach out to them. But something
Hmm.
very, very important that I stress is that may be different than some of the programs out there. This is closure for yourself. It's not closure for others. If you reach out and you've made the energy and effort and you're not well received, okay,
That's
fine.
not on you. And that's what that is actually finally getting to self-actualization,
Yes,
because
exactly.
you can't change the other person's mind, but you can still clean up your side of the street. And I
Bingo.
like look back to that too. When I feel guilty about something I know I said or did, even now, I'll go back and apologize, even if it's my kid and I got a little mad or something. I'll go back and I'll sit with them and I'll explain, mommy just a little stressed out. I apologize for my behavior, and if they don't receive it, whatever. Or even just people around me, like, if I've said something that I regretted, like I said, I feel I'm very good at feeling guilty, I guess, which is an addiction in itself. But I'm working on it. But when I feel guilty, I go back and I apologize. It just takes the weight off my shoulders. And I don't really care, like you said, about how the other person receives it because I can't change the way they think, right? And that's where you get to that point of self-actualization, is that you can't change other people. All you can do is your best to clean up your side of the street.
That's very healthy. I mean, and you can tell just talking to you, you've done a lot of work on yourself, and I applaud everything you're saying. You've got all the right tools. It's really great to hear these things that you're saying to me. It makes me very happy, because that's the key. The key is understanding that you're not going to achieve your self-actualization until you can just say, well, I've done my part. I made the apology. I made the effort. That's on them. Now I'm back to working on myself again. And if you can take that attitude, then you're going to move forward much more positive in your life. And so often I think that we as humans tend to take those moments and say, "Oh man, I just can't make anybody happy." And this can turn into a downward spiral. Like you just did
Mhm.
all this work on yourself, and then you've reached this point where you wanted forgiveness. Forgiveness is not, you're not necessarily going to get any forgiveness from somebody, but you have to at least acknowledge what you did against them. And, that's on them. Sometimes, and I've had this happen, somebody came back to me 4 years after I apologized to them and they wouldn't have anything to do with it, and they apologized to me for being such a jerk when I had reached out to them. And they ends up telling me that they were in a really bad spot at that time, and I had no idea. But that was just really interesting to me because it's rare that you ever see it come back, but
What
it can
happened?
sometimes.
It happened to me too. The girl who had me held down and beat me up in high school, I used to read tarot cards, right? And
Okay.
I seen her at one of my functions. And so I reached out to her because I know that there was still parts to play on my end, right? And she's like, "Why did you message me?" And I'm like, "I messaged you because I wanted to say that even though we have had our negative interactions, I apologize for X, Y, and Z." And then she in turn apologized too and was like, "We were stupid kids. I'm very sorry. And that was such a huge weight off of my shoulders because she was my bully for years and it wasn't like it was hard bullying. So I never thought I was ever going to get an apology from any of these women who did this to me, but the main one apologized to me and had me read her cards and everything. So we resolved the issue. And like you said, sometimes it comes back. And maybe it comes back because it needed to come back, you know?
Yeah, the universe has an interesting way of leveling itself out. It really does. And I think you really truly get back from it what you put out into the world. And if you change your mindset that in these positive ways about being positive, I am sober, I am this, you're going to get those vibes back. If you are in the state of constantly walking around saying that, I'm an alcoholic, then people are going to see you that way. And then you're going to get that negativity that comes with it because there's a certain shame, it's that
Stigma.
and stigma to being, under substance abuse challenges.
Hmm.
There's a true stigma. And what's a shame is that there's even a greater stigma, I think, at sometimes that you're in treatment, that you're trying to get help for it. And I really hope to take that shame out of the conversation. There shouldn't be any. I mean, anybody that is seeking help or assistance, I mean, by all means, throw all the help you can at those people because they recognize that they want to be a greater version of themselves. So let's
And that's
let's help them out.
because a lot of people walk around not realizing that there's issues going on, or they're pushing them down, and they're not allowing themselves to feel it, and they're not realizing that they're doing this. Do you know what I mean? So bringing awareness to even this, not even from an addiction standpoint, but from a standpoint of personality things because of things that have happened to you in the past, being able to go back and work on, like, this is why I acted this way, that, and this is what maybe caused it, and then let's see how I react if I do it this way. Like, it's just so much more, like, it can fix anybody for whatever it is that you're struggling from, you know what I mean? Especially like because I think that mental health is a huge part in addiction,
Mhm.
and traumas and stuff like that. So that's why you kind of have to go deeper sometimes to be able to like figure out what's making you react that way, right?
Yeah, and great segue material is thanks again. I love this. You're just lining it up for me. Uh, everybody I've worked with, one on one, ultimately it has come down to one traumatic event in their childhood. There's one event, and it sounds almost cliche to say this, but
It's
even in my
true.
own case, it came down to one singular event that occurred when I was 8 years old, and it struck a chord of this fear of abandonment within me that was so powerful that it changed every interaction that I had with everybody in my life, really to this day. Because even though I know it's there now and I have rewired my brain to change how I interact, there are still moments of absolute panic that occur in me that I feel like somebody is going to leave me. And I'll tell you how deep this goes and how silly it is. I This is about 15 years ago. I was having this conversation with a kindergartner that I just met, and it was like a friend of one of my nephews. And in the middle of this little tiny conversation I was having with this kid, I was afraid that they were going to leave the conversation, and it struck this like massive fear within me. I had a fear of abandonment that somebody that I just met was going to leave a conversation. So much so that in that right after that ended, I went to my car and like had a drink. That's how silly
Yeah, but I
it
get it.
got.
For me, my the thing that goes back to it is silly in itself because I was supposed to win this award. I worked really, really hard for it. But there was this other girl who was more of a goody, like I was a goody two shoes too, but she was more of a goody two shoes. But even though I had done more than she had, I deserved that award. I should have got the award. She got it instead. And that's where I felt like screw life. I put so much effort into this and got nothing out of it. I got treated poorly. And that just set me off. And so like if somebody like treats me in an unfair way, it
Mm-hmm.
can come out very easily. Like per se was because I go to college, right? Per
Mm-hmm.
se, I like am trying to talk to the dean and I can't get a hold of them or something. It strikes something with me because it's like nobody's helping me, just like nobody helped me when I
Mm.
was younger, when I tried my hardest, So it's like when I try my hardest and I'm getting nowhere, that's when I get triggered really easily. So it is
Wow.
silly in itself too, right? But it goes back that far and it's that simple. It's weird, right?
It is. And because you recognize that, you're able to think around it. And that's exactly what my method does for everyone is that once you work so much on trying to get to that base trigger, and it took quite a lot of work and a lot of journaling, which is another thing I haven't talked about yet, but I think that journaling is a very important point. I often say that, I never know what I truly think until I write it down. And I believe that because there's so much noise in this world and there's so many thoughts that run through my head on a daily basis. And just taking a few minutes to sit down with a pen and paper at the end of the day or the beginning of the day. I journaled this morning instead of last night, but it's just those few minutes are like, what's going on with me? What am I thinking about right now? What's impacting me positively, negatively? And it really kind of hones it in to be like, oh, I guess this is how I feel about that. I didn't realize that. I knew that all of this was going on, but it's interesting sometimes because it forces you to take all of your thoughts, which can flow in 1,000 different directions, and it focuses them down into one thing.
And I love that because I am like a cage rattler, I guess you could say, right? Like in my head, it's just constant, right? So I definitely, I know I need to journal more because that's what helped me get through my dad when he was in a coma was
Mhm.
journaling because I stayed in the ICU with him. So I had time to do it, right? So I just need to be able to, like, when my kids go to bed, do it and like you know what I mean. I can set aside time for it. I've just not, and I feel like that's what's lacking in my life right now. So I know it's important because it's like I'm in a hard situation right now, and
Yeah.
because I'm not journaling, the stress is like making me not feel well at times. But if I was journaling, I would be able to put my emotions on paper and not have them going like this, right?
Mm. Yeah, exactly. A one way to think about it is it's a way to let all of your emotions flow out of your head and onto a page. And I think about it sometimes like it's capturing it. It's like capturing it and throwing it out of my head in a really weird sense. But if you kind of picture and envision it that way, it makes it more cathartic to actually spend 5 minutes in journal. I mean, everybody's like, "How do you have time to journal?" I'm like, "You're so busy." I'm like, I just literally spend 5 minutes a day doing it. It's not over the top. It's just
Mm-hmm.
enough to take my thoughts and put them down on paper and then read them later in the day and say, okay, all right, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm headed. I know what's important to me right now. Because oftentimes when you can get yourself locked into a spiral of various types, shame spirals, drunk spirals, like anxiety spirals. You can
Mm-hmm.
really get yourself like just not doing anything because your mind is racing in whatever direction and whatever thought currently has hold over you. That and
Exactly.
that's why I really think that journaling is so helpful. I definitely talk about it a bunch because I think that that's a great component to everything else that you're doing.
And like I know just from my own like way, like right now, it's everything's going on in my head. But I remember like in the past when I had journaled, that it was cathartic. Even if it was like 5 minutes of just writing down what I was feeling, I could
Mhm.
go back and read it later, and it helps a lot too, because you're not feeling the same then, and you're like, okay. And you can work on yourself through that as well, because you can pick out the pieces where it's like,
Mhm.
this is leading me down a path of a trigger of either depression or relapse, and I need to figure out how to stop this exact, like, maybe not necessarily emotion, but reaction to
Mhm.
certain emotions, right? And
Right. And the other,
sorry, yeah, just looking back helped so much.
yeah, no, I was just going to follow up and say there's another positive that I find in it as well is that, as you said, looking back, is that you can see, like, why did I ever react that way? I mean, what was I thinking? That was what I was worried about. You can have the positive reinforcement of realizing that the things that were the huge everything, the world is collapsing upon me. You look back 3 months later and think, ah, I'm still alive. I'm still here. And look at all the great things I've done since I wrote that. And that can
Hmm.
be so helpful to your building you up as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you have a book
Mhm.
about your method, and you give away those other things, and you do speaking engagements, but do you do any virtual workshops or anything?
Well, it's funny you ask because I'm just now in the process of taking what I do into that virtual environment. So I actually have two books out. My first book, Flavors of Confidence, a reflection for those in need, is my memoir. It's about my crazy existence, living all over this country and all the various careers and crazy antics that I got myself into. So it's more of a fun read. It's about who I am and how I got where
Hmm.
I'm at. And then the sober method is the actual method. It's the Bible of how to do what it is that I try to teach everyone. But I was an entrepreneur and a business owner, a high performer, and I saw a particular need I was very alone at the top. And so I've worked one-on-one privately for a long time with like doctors, lawyers, engineers, pharmacists, people who really struggle to show themselves in other programs because in a
They can't,
smaller,
yeah,
yeah, they
their job, their profession, they don't want to be seen as somebody who's struggling, right? So,
exactly. It's kind of dangerous, and some of them can lose their licenses, their jobs, but those people have struggles just like all of us do. And so that's kind of where my focus has been for the last 2.5, 3 years since I wrote my book. But at the huge urging of some of my past clients, they said, you need to get out there in the virtual world. So that's going to
hmm.
be happening here in the month of June. I'm actually going live sobermethod.com. We're going to be doing workshops, virtuals, and stair step all the way to the one-on-one work I do now. But I'm bringing the method down into a teachable
Hmm.
and to virtual weekly meetings where
Can
we
reach more
can
people
I
that
can reach
way.
more people. Yep, exactly. I feel like I've done some great work and helped some really talented people save their careers. But I don't feel
Especially
like
because
I'm
of that
getting.
fear. That's why I think that's so great, right?
Yeah, 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 no. And so this is an opportunity to get this wider, and I think that it's such a powerful secondary option to the other programs
Mhm.
that I really want to get the message out broader. I started a Reddit community under Sober Method as well, or whatever they call those these days. But
Yeah, I
anyway,
haven't used Reddit in a while.
yeah, but you know what? That was kind of interesting. That was at the urging of my assistant. She's like, "I think we should do a Reddit community." I was like, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, because it's anonymous." Because one thing that I also was struggling at first is since I was focused on these high achievers, couldn't necessarily get followers. I couldn't get the type of
Hmm.
standard social media
Yeah,
traction.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah, because like I'm not gonna like your page. I mean, I actually have clients that are like, I would never like your page. Then somebody will know that I, and I'm like, okay, point taken.
Exactly, right? That's why it's
So,
good through workshops because people can still remain anonymous through those
yes,
because they're just watching your video, you know?
that's
So
right.
they still can remain anonymous and do it in their own way, in their own time. Because I used to do classes where I just filmed them and would send them to people and then maybe meet once a week or
Hmm.
like, you know what I mean, to talk. But
Yeah.
I would teach the lesson and send it to them. Then they can watch it over and over again. They're
Yep.
anonymous. It's not anything where they need to be known because like I was teaching tarot card lessons and a lot of people don't want to be seen as the woohoo people, but they're still interested in it, right? So
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
I taught it that way, right? But that's exactly why it would work for you as well because they would be completely anonymous and they can stay that way because I didn't even think of that, but it's so true that
Hmm.
they could lose their license. They also could lose a lot of respect from their clients. Like
Yes.
it can be very negative for them to go to something like a 12-step program because,
Yeah.
or like you said, even liking your page, and it's like, oh, why does he like his page? Like,
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
if
Exactly.
people really dig deep on people nowadays, especially those type of people, right? Like higher profile people.
Hmm.
Something like me, they never dig really into, but like somebody that is in a profession like that, yeah, they're gonna look for things, and even the board of or associations for those people might look into
Yes.
things and see something too. So it's really important for them to be anonymous. Really important. So that's
Yep.
great.
Yeah, you totally nailed that, and that's why. So, but I'm super excited about it. This is a my path to get here, as your path was tremendously unique, and the person who saved me, so to speak, who really got me on the right track in my life was killed by a drunk driver. So that was my catalyst for really starting and dedicating my life to this work. Otherwise, I probably would not have gone down this road and this path, but her
Mm,
death is what led me to really push
that's
forward and say
awful.
this is what I'm going to do. So this is really her legacy, and that's why I work so hard to.
That's beautiful that you're carrying on the legacy too, because I've lost a lot of friends along the way too, and it's because of these reasons. And I look back and I think to myself, like, they weren't killed by drunk drivers. They took their own lives, but it was due to not having another way, you know? So
Yeah.
that's why I'm so passionate about this kind of stuff because I agree. And like their legacies because of like not having other options, it's great that your mentor, you can carry on what she wanted and you can feel like you're fulfilling two people's passions almost,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Really. Definitely. I truly do.
That's amazing. So thank you so much for coming on and explaining everything to us. I'm going to put all of your links, like your link to your website and the link to your books and stuff, all in the notes for everybody, okay?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on today, Jasmine, and everybody listening. I just want you to stop for a moment and look at yourself in the mirror and remind yourself that you have the power to change your own life. It belongs to you and you alone, and the moment you decide to do it, you will make it happen.
I agree. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing a different perspective because I don't think one size fits all. And I'm so glad that you came on and shared your methods with us because I do believe that it is something we all can benefit from, addict or not. So thank you again. I appreciate it so much. I hope you have a nice rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.